Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marble Snap video. So in this one, we are taking a look at today's new card, Jeff the Baby Landshark. This has been one of the more anticipated recent releases, and I'm really excited to play with Jeff today. So let's take a look at some decks where Jeff can find a home. The first deck here is a Thanos Zoo deck. I think Thanos Zoo has been kind of underrated for a while. It's a pretty solid deck that's a lot of fun to play, and Jeff kind of fits the role nicely in here in giving us something that can move around, which is good with our Angela. It's just a lot of flexibility with this card. We didn't really run much in the way of 2-drops outside of Angela and Hitmonkey, and Jeff seems like a reasonable 2-drop to add to this style of deck that's kind of focused on swarming the board. Can be convenient too, because we're not committed to wherever we're putting him down, and one of this deck's weaknesses often is locations that kind of limit what we can play, so Jeff helping us get around that seems really good. Next up, we have a bit of a different take on Sarah Control. This is more of a low to the ground version of Sarah Control, so we cut our other powerful 4-drop in Enchantress, and we cut Zabu because of that as well. And we're just kind of going in on running almost as many 2-drops as we can so that we can play as many cards as we can on the final turn to really juice up the Hitmonkey. Fast also gets some pretty nice value in this deck between going wide across all 3 Mysterio bodies, as well as being a pretty significant boost to our cards like Bishop, Angela, and Hitmonkey. We do still have our tech options here in Killmonger and Shang-Chi. Killmonger can still do a lot to make our board nice and big with that Nova buff, and then our other inclusions here being Scarlet Witch and Sentinel for 2 more good 2-drops, Sarah, obviously the namesake of the deck, and Jeff, like I said in the Zoo version, good synergy with Angela and just a good card for helping us get around annoying locations, which sometimes Sarah can have trouble with, especially when they're ones that Scarlet Witch isn't able to shut down. Another deck that I think has quite a bit of potential with Sarah and Jeff is Sarah Surfer. The 2-drop spot traditionally has been for Lizard, but I do think Jeff might actually make a compelling case at running that instead. We are trying to limit what the opponent can play and where they can play with cards like Storm and Goose and Juggernaut. We really just have a lot of flexible tools here to mess with the opponent's game plan. Mr. Fantastic helps us fight for multiple lanes. Jeff helps us get around some of the more annoying locations for Surfer. Then we also have the standard Surfer package like Brood, Surfer himself, some good 3-drops in Polaris and Maximus for just good stats. Rogue is kind of our tech inclusion. You don't necessarily have to run Rogue, but there are a decent amount of ongoings running around, so I do think she is probably one of the better techs for Surfer right now. Then we have Jeff Ramp, so pretty standard ramp list here. We're trying to get Electro, Wave, or Jubilee to cheat out some of our powerful cards before we are normally able to play them. Trying to get out Sandman as early as possible to limit what the opponent can play, because our deck doesn't really care about the fact that we're only playing 1 card a turn most of the time. And if we do care, it's usually because of something like Jeff, and fun fact, Jeff actually dodges Sandman. So you are actually allowed to play Jeff and another card, even with the Sandman effect ongoing. He also has a little bit of synergy with Ebony Maw, giving us another way to play into the Maw lane outside of our Dr. Doom. So we are running some decent 5-drops, and Arrow, who's very good when the opponent can only play 1 card a turn. Spider-Woman, just good power for the cost, can be reused with Odin, dodges Shang-Chi. Our powerful 6-drops mainly being Dr. Doom, Magneto, and Odin. Chavez for a bit of more deck drawing consistency in the early game, as well as a bit of a high roll on Jubilee, since she'll pretty much always be in the deck until that final turn. But yeah, I think the ramp deck has always been pretty good. I used it to do a lot of my Climb to Infinite this month, and Jeff might be a pretty solid addition to it. Another deck that I think will appreciate Jeff is kind of the Good Cards Doom Wave deck. The idea with this one is we're just trying to play pretty solid cards for the cost, and then get down Wave on turn 5, float 2 mana, and slam a very impactful card plus a She-Hulk, and while limiting the opponent to usually only being able to play 1 card themselves. So a lot of just good powerful cards here. Iceman and Sunspot in our 1-drop spot, Angela and Lizard, and then Jeff. Obviously, nice synergy with Angela. It just gives us a bit of flexibility in where we want our power to end up going if we end up committing to a lane that we kind of regret going in on later in the game. Mr. Fantastic is really good for any deck that cares about trying to hold priority. Polaris can be nice for moving around a armor or otherwise inconvenient cheap cost card. Shang-Chi for our main bit of interaction. Arrow to kind of close out the game with Wave if we already have the lead. Doom so we can go wide on the Wave turn, so that way we can kind of hedge our bets depending on where the opponent decides to play. And then She-Hulk, because obviously good with Sunspot, and lets us play a second thing when we're limiting the opponent with Wave on the final turn. And the last one here is Jeff Lactus. So this might seem a little silly on the surface, but I do think there's actually some merit to this deck, or Jeff being included in a Galactus shell. And the main reason for that is Galactus cares a lot about fighting for priority, because if you have priority, your opponent can't really use their tech cards to counter you, like Debris or Arrow or Magneto, etc. So Jeff is nice because usually when we're playing our early game cards as Galactus, we want to stack them into one lane, so that way there are always two options for where we're going to play Galactus, and that way the opponent has a harder time guessing where we're going if they have something like Cosmo. Now the nice thing with Jeff is we can actually put him in a lane that we might Galactus later on. It adds to some mind games where the opponent doesn't know if you're going to actually play your Galactus in the Jeff lane and move him, or if you're going to play him somewhere else, and more importantly, it can help us fight for priority. Yeah, it's only 3 power, but sometimes opponents aren't really spreading out their power quite a bit, so the fact that we can stack one lane and then get Jeff in another lane to help fight for that priority, I think is a pretty big bonus. Will it make the world's biggest difference in Galactus? I don't really expect it to, but I do think there is a niche application here, especially because he does also have that positive interaction with Electro. So if we are trying to win the game without our Galactus, if we didn't draw it, this allows us to get down, let's say, multiple 2-drops on turn 4. So those are the decks we have for Jeff the Baby Landshark. I'm really excited for this card. I think he's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to try him out today. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you're excited to try out Jeff with, and if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.